Jamie points this out all the time, and it's 100% correct, that abortion is obviously not just a question of either where you stand on questions of freedom or coercion or sovereignty or rights. Those are crucial questions, obviously. They're central defining questions. And being on the right side of those is fundamental. But also, when you get to the issue of the Hyde Amendment, you are talking class stuff. You're talking race stuff. You're talking profound disparities. And I think not only the types of profound disparities that have always been central and have always been wrong, but ones that might emerge potentially. It's totally possible that an extreme far-right Supreme Court could absolutely sign off on a complete abortion ban in a case involving, one of these state initiatives. It's totally possible, and we should be preparing ourselves for that. Absolutely. And it's also totally possible that we live just in an even more stratified country, and the ruling does come down to something to the effect of abortion is still legal in, say, New York or California, and it's totally illegal and even criminalized in Alabama. So how does that translate in terms of class, in terms of mobility, in terms of legal safety, in terms of another huge disparity in terms of basic services that people have access to depending on their economic standing? And the Hyde Amendment is the precursor to that. If you wrote a history of this stuff keeps going in a reactionary direction, you will identify 1974, the Hyde Amendment, 2 years after Roe v. Wade, as the tip of the spear of saying, okay, we'll retreat on it to some slight extent by criminalizing poor women for accessing health services, which incidentally we want to do across the board anyways because we want to gut all public health programs. So that's what Joe Biden's stance is. It's not just, and again, it's funny because I have no problem with the idea of building as broad a coalition as possible and speaking to different constituencies. We should not miss that, in fact. But that's a substantive assault on millions. And that could be the policy precursor of, I'll quote Andrew Neil, Stone Age politics. Elizabeth Warren is going to articulate that very effectively here with Chris Hayes.
There was an interesting thing that happened today. The former Vice President Joe Biden came out and said that he would not support repealing the Hyde Amendment. That is a provision of federal law that bars the federal government from funding abortion services through Medicare, Medicaid, and others. You disagree with that position?
Yes, I do.
Is Joe Biden wrong?
Yes. So
why is he wrong?
Here's how I look at this. I've lived in America where abortions were illegal.
Yeah.
And understand this, women still got abortions. Now, some got lucky on what happened, and some got really unlucky on what happened. But the bottom line is they were there. And under the Hyde Amendment, under every one of these efforts to try to chip away or to push back or to get rid of Roe versus Wade, understand this, women of means will still have access to abortions. Who won't will be poor women, will be working women, will be women who can't afford to take off 3 days from work, will be very young women, will be women who've been raped, will be women who have been molested by someone in their own family. We do not pass laws that take away that freedom from the women who are most vulnerable.
It's absolutely right. She articulates it perfectly and powerfully, and that should be played and beamed and repeated constantly. And it is the distinction between, if you want to go somewhere and say, hey, I grew up around here and I get where you're coming from and I don't necessarily represent this, different demographics and different waves of different social attitudes on a cultural level and what we're signifying to each other, that's fine. That's part of politics. But the question of women's fundamental justice and health with regards to abortion and healthcare generally is absolutely non-negotiable. And not only has Joe Biden negotiated it, he's on the wrong side of it. And she told you the exact material consequences of that. So, of course, perfectly put by Elizabeth Warren. Excellent. I don't have anything to add to that. You're calling...